Having survived the destruction of Doma as well as the entire world, Cyan is probably one of the more uh, interesting characters in regards to his role in the story. Not to mention the amount of loss he goes through in general, losing his family, country, and king to the Gestalian Empire, and of course watching the world getting destroyed uh, and everything. Pretty much forces Cyan to deal with events that are beyond his control, and as well as having to deal with PSTD, which is pretty nasty in general. And this game does a pretty darn good job of helping Cyan in general overcome his uh, guilt in general throughout the course of the game, especially here in the World of Ruin when you complete the Dreamscape quest and everything else. But as despite being one of the more better characters in terms of story narrative among the returners, his gameplay is not exactly as desirable to most fans. I mean, I love playing Cyan myself, but even I am forced to kind of accept some of the issues that he does have. Hi, folks. This is RotorStorm331. We're doing another guide of Final Fantasy VI characters guide. That is. These guides are meant to help beginners and newcomers get into these characters so they can know everything there is to, or at least some part of it about them when they play these characters. So today we're covering the survivor, Cyan, uh, Garmand. He's pretty much, by the time World Ruin occurs, to be the last person from Doma still alive at this point of the game. There was one other survivor, the Doma Sentry, but that person's fate was never revealed. So it's possible he might have been executed by the Gestalian Empire right after the castle was conquered, or somewhere around those lines. But anyway, today we're going to be covering Cyan's, doing an overview on Cyan, as well as his strengths, weaknesses, um, his skills, end-game equipment, and of course what stats to actually invest towards on level up bonuses. So anyway, let's begin. So Cyan is pretty much more dedicated as a physical fighter overall. I should probably warn you right now that these stats are not the actual stats he starts off with. This is due to all those stat bonuses and equipment boosts and whatnot, but still, it's still a pretty good indicator that Cyan is pretty much a pretty good physical fighter. Not to mention he's a samurai, for one thing. Of course, if anyone's played Final Fantasy V like I have, you'll know that samurais are pretty much excellent clean sweepers and overall good fighters in that game. But here in Final Fantasy VI, it's a little bit different because they don't have as many broken tools as they did in 5 to begin with, but they still have some serviceable use. But unfortunately, Cyan himself, being at the age of 50 at the time Final Fantasy VI starts, pretty much has some pretty middling stats when you get him. He becomes recruitable during your time on Sabin's scenario. You'll get him during the invasion of Domo and after it's destroyed. And he'll join up again in World of Ruin when you find him at Mount Zozo. So anyway, Cyan's initial stats are 40 on strength, 28 on speed, stamina at 33, magic at 25, HP gain of 53, and MP gain of 5. So on his default strength alone, this makes him the 4th strongest returner playable that the party gets access to. Though by the time you get through with Sabin's scenario, you'll have Sabin, who has the 2nd highest strength among the returners, and Gallo's ranked 3rd at 44. And Sabin, of course, has 47. Of course, Umaro beats all of them with his massive 57 strength. Of course, he does have decent stamina. Speed otherwise is a bit subpar or low of 28, though that could be remedied with Esper gains, especially here on the Pixel Remaster version. Of course, one of the big negative draws that Cyan gets among more of the expert players is very low magic stat of 25. Of course, as you can definitely tell, I did put some levels and equipment boosts to make sure that Cyan has actually very decent magic here. Of course, he won't be able to deal the high damage that Realm, Terra, Celeste, and some of the other characters can do on their own with their very high magic stats at default. But still, it's still a good idea to get Cyan's magic stat up on par or decent level for the most part. But for the most part, Cyan does prioritize physical damage over magical damage, but unfortunately his Bushido, his own personal skill, kind of splits between either fighting physically or using magic in conjunction with those attacks. So Bushido is part of the skill Bushido, of course, is actually used by the swords samurai of Domo, and basically this gives Cyan different techniques to use in conjunction with for attacking enemies. Some of them are physical-based attacks, 3 of them at least. You would think Cyan would have a lot more physical attack abilities with his Bushidos, but only 3 of them deal physical damage, which are being Fang, Flurry, and Tempest. 3 of his Bushidos deal magic damage, and that's, of course, Sky, Dragon, and Eclipse. Whereas Tiger and Oblivion don't really aren't affected by either strength or magic, since they're more situational Bushidos. But you can definitely tell that unlike Sabin, who has more offensive tools, Cyan has more situational tools to use depending on the situation. Some of them are actually good to use early on when you get him, but they fall off by the time you get into late World of Balance and into World of Ruin, mostly due to the fact of instant death, among other things. And ironically enough, Bushidos aren't affected by any of Cyan's equipment when he wields katanas and whatnot, so this makes equipping Cyan kind of pointless in some cases, but it's still a good idea to keep his attack power up to speed and up to date for the most part. Another downside about Cyan is his equipment rolls. He's one of the several characters that can mostly equip heavy gear for mostly his equipment, so he doesn't really get a whole lot of light gear options, as you see right here. And technically, if he wants stat boost, he'll definitely want to get access to lightweight gear as much as possible, but we'll cover that eventually. But katanas are kind of become a rarity in World of Ruin, whereas Murakumo and his current weapon, Matsun no Kamai, my apologies if I don't say that correctly, are the only katanas you can probably get in the World of Ruin through drops. The former being acquired from beating the Red Dragon, the latter being acquired after you defeat Fiend in Kafka's Tower. One funny note to mention about the final weapon as well as Mersame is that this gives Cyan some decent evasion increasement, and Cyan has some pretty decent evasion. Now that we're playing versions that have essentially removed the evade bug glitch in general, so you can definitely prioritize building up his evasion to make him a lot more evasive. Though his magic evasion does have some issues. Along with Sabin, he has arguably the worst magic defense, probably more so than Sabin does, and probably has low magic evasion, but then again, he's not the only character that has low magic evasion. So this actually makes him one of the better candidates for the Aegis Shield, or even the Force Armor and Force Shield to be applied, if you want to protect him from magic for the most part. But anyway, we'll get down to his final recommendation for final gear a little bit later, but right now we need to go over his meat and potatoes, which is his Bushidos. So like Sabin, Cyan will get Bushido's new Bushido techniques on certain levels, and each one has different priorities, and I've already described some of them in general. So we're going to go ahead and start covering these right now. Fang is Cyan's default Bushido that he'll start at level 1. This deals physical damage to one opponent. It has a battle power of 120 and it ignores defense and some blockable. This is pretty much Cyan's go-to Bushido for the most part. This also deals, and it's probably has the fastest charge time, pretty much. So you'll be using Fang quite a lot throughout Final Fantasy VI when you use Cyan for the most part. So you should probably use this most of the time in combat in general, and this will not fail you most of the time. One thing I should point out immediately, and I almost forgot about this, is that back then Bushidos were linked to a charge meter that was not affected by Cyan's speed or even haste status. So this was also another reason why Cyan became virtually unpopular among players, because of the charge time, and it also prevented them from activating other characters unless they got their turns activated before Cyan started charging. Here in the Pixel Remaster version, they essentially did away with the charge meter. So fans that were probably not too happy about the charge meter are probably celebrating this because they'll think they'll get the Bushido right off the gate. So does this actually make Cyan a lot more better than previous versions? The answer is no, because even if you were to select, let's say for instance, Flurry, Cyan would take his time to charge up that attack, pretty much in the same way you would pretty much wait for the charge meter to hit 4 to activate Flurry. So at the end of the day, he still has to take the same amount of time that he needs to perform the Bushidos. You just don't have to worry about having to having to wait for him to get done with his, so you can perform other characters' actions. But I will state this right now: you're still going to have to put up with the overall charge time. So the charging isn't going to go away for the most part. This also kind of makes one of his Bushidos kind of redundant, because this dragon right here was actually an excellent stopgap if you were going for Eclipse or Tempest or even Oblivion, and Cyan was on the verge of getting KO'd. You can easily use that to cancel the charge and trigger Dragon to refill Cyan's HP and MP as well. But anyway, continuing on with the other Bushidos, his second one is Sky, which he gets at level 6. This deals non-elemental magic damage and serves as his counterattack stance until his next turn. So basically, if any enemy were to attack Cyan after he activates Sky, basically what he does is that he'll counterattack with a powerful magic attack. Even though it does look physical on paper, it does have a spell power of 56 and ignores defense, and it's unblockable. This is actually pretty decent earlier on when there's more enemies doing physical attacks as opposed to magical attacks, but later in the game, a lot more enemies will start prioritizing magic. I mean, it's not like they're not going to stop doing physical attacks, but magic attacks are probably going to be the more common attack you'll see from other opponents, as well as special abilities. So Sky kind of loses its effectiveness as the game progresses, but overall, this is still pretty decent. Even with Cyan's low 25 magic stat, this actually deals some pretty high damage regardless. So if you're going up against enemies that are actually have high physical defenses, Sky will actually pierce those said defenses. So this is actually a somewhat decent Bushido, but the fact that you're resorting for counterattacking and betting on enemies doing physical attacks for that to happen, this is not really a very good Bushido overall. Tiger is his third Bushido that he gets at level 12. This doesn't really deal any physical or magic damage. What it does instead is that it halves the opponent's HP and inflicts sap damage in turn. It's unblockable, but it'll fail against enemies that are immune to death. Unfortunately, one of the big problems with this Bushido, though, is that the fact that you're going up against a lot of undead monsters, or later in the game, you're going up against enemies that are protected against death, which unfortunately makes this Bushido rather useless. Not to mention, you have other options like Gravity to do the same effect, but Sap is actually pretty good overall. But by the time World of Ruin occurs, Tiger kind of loses its usefulness, so it's probably good during World of Balance, not so much during World of Ruin. Hang on one second, real quick. Sorry about that. Anyway, we'll go over Cyan's next Bushido, which is Flurry. He'll get this at level 15. This deals physical damage to 4 random targets. It has a battle power of 72, and it's unblockable. Now, until you get Tempest, this is actually a very good Bushido to use against bosses, especially since most of them are going to be one-on-one engagements. I don't like the fact that you're going to be targeting random enemies most of the time, since Flurry actually deals the most high amount of damage when it's on one target. Of course, when he does attack multiple targets, sometimes he'll just attack one, or one opponent only, or sometimes spreads the damage to everyone. In my opinion, this actually deals pretty much roughly the same amount of damage as Cyan's attack command, but it is possible for Flurry to outdo damage from Fang most of the time when you combine the combined damage all together. So I would recommend use Flurry for boss fights, and just switch to Tempest once Cyan gets this available. Dragon is Cyan's 5th Bushido that he learns at level 24. This is his only healing Bushido that he gets access to, and it's one of his magic-based Bushidos. This allows Cyan to absorb HP and MP from one opponent, has a spell power of 49 for HP damage, whereas for the spell power for MP damage is 12. Unfortunately, if you use this against undead foes, this will heal them and damage Cyan instead. So, back when the charge meter was available in past versions, this was actually a perfect stopgap, as I mentioned, when it comes to going for Eclipse or Tempest or even Oblivion. It's actually a very decent Bushido to use, especially if Cyan's on the verge of death and you need to heal both his HP and MP, even though we do have Cure spells, Osmos, and Drain to do the exact same thing. But it's still a pretty good Bushido overall to use to heal Cyan. Just make sure you're not fighting any undead monsters. Eclipse is actually Cyan's only true multi-targeting Bushido that he gets. He'll get this at level 34. This deals non-elemental magic damage and inflicts stop on all enemies. It'll have a spell power of 97, and it's unblockable and ignores split damage. It has a hit rate for stop of 140. So this is actually Cyan's go-to multi-targeting Bushido. Of course, this does deal magic damage, which is kind of bad given the fact his default magic's at 25. But if you're dedicated to get Cyan's magic stat to a decent level increasement on magic, this can actually do serviceable damage, as well as inflict stop on any enemies that are actually susceptible to the stop status. But technically, you'll be using the Eclipse more for damage as opposed to inflicting stop. But overall, this is actually a pretty decent Bushido, and it's another reason why to get Cyan's magic stat out of the 25 range and into something better. Tempest is Cyan's second to last Bushido that he gets, and it's arguably his Bushido. My apologies, Bushido. It's his second best Bushido in the entire game, and probably his best one overall. He'll acquire this at level 44. This deals physical damage to 4 random enemies. It has a battle power of 70 and ignores defense, and it's unblockable. Technically, Tempest hits way more harder than Flurry does, of course, though I find it funny that its battle power is actually 70. Unless I read that wrong. But overall, it's still a very powerful Bushido on its own, because its damage will probably outdo Flurry's damage for the most part, even though Flurry has 72 for each hit, of course. And of course, each hit from Tempest has a battle power of 70. But of course, Tempest really makes Cyan actually more usable by the time he gets access to this. Especially once he gets access to the quick spell, he'll be able to perform up to 8 times with Tempest. So that means he'll be able to rack up damage almost to the point it breaks the game's actual damage limit of 9,999. So this actually makes this, along with the quick spell, definitely something Cyan wants to get access to immediately. Oblivion is Cyan's last Bushido that he gets in the game. He'll learn this at level 70. Of course, the more easier way to do this, of course, is with completing the Dreamscape side quest in World of Ruin. Basically, this allows Cyan to inflict death on all enemies. It basically has the same effects as Odin and Raiden's Sakutskin or Shin Sakutskin. My apologies if I don't say that correctly, by the way. This also works against undead enemies, but will fail against enemies immune to death. And it also stalls an enemy's final attack for 1 turn. So, even though this is actually kind of useless, given the fact more enemies are actually protected against instant death, it definitely does work against enemies that are not protected against death. Not to mention if they can be sliced up like Sakutskin and Shin Sakutskin. pretty much. And the fact that it works against undead enemies is also pretty nice to have. And the fact that it stops enemies from performing their final attacks, like Yojimbo's eye for an eye final attack, which he does, which is an instant kill. That's also a pretty good thing to stop enemies from performing their final attacks. Of course, that's kind of very rare in general, but still, it still has some uses. I did find out that nearly all the enemies in Ancient Castle outside the bosses are actually susceptible to Oblivion. Of course, those enemies from the Dreamscape sequence that are present there as well probably aren't affected by it, though. But this can also work against some of the monsters in Ozra's Mansion. And the fact that it can also work against undead can also play pretty nicely to your favor. So Oblivion's not entirely useless, but there's actually better options for this Bushido in general. And there's other ones like Tempest Flurry Fang, of course. Eclipse is also good, and Dragon, among other things. But Oblivion's actually pretty good against any enemies that are weak against being hit with instant death attacks. So that covers Cyan's Bushidos. And one thing to point out, though, is that when you do complete the Dreamscape side quest, Cyan will learn all of his Bushido techniques at once. So regardless of the level, you'll get them regardless. So you can be at level 31, finish the Dreamscape, and Cyan will get all of his Bushidos without having to meet the level up requirements. So if you want Cyan to get access to Tempest, Eclipse, and all that stuff right off the gate, it's probably best to get the Dreamscape sequence out of the way. But in my opinion, you probably might want to wait until you get access to better spells for coverage like Blizzaga, Karaga, Arise, and all that stuff, because those will help you immensely when you go into the Dreamscape. So in regards to status, Cyan should definitely prioritize boosting up his strength whenever possible on level ups. This will improve his damage for Fang, Flurry, and Tempest. Of course, if you want to make full use of Eclipse, Dragon, and even Sky if you want to, you might want to put some levels towards building up his magic stat as well. Agility might be also another okay option for him to boost up his rather low agility. Of course, if you want to get his stamina up a bit, I would put a few levels towards stamina just to make sure he has the ability to resist instant death attacks a lot more easier, but you should really prioritize mostly strength and magic. Strength for most of all, magic being a close second, and speed and stamina kind of distant third, obviously. Of course, given his MP being a lot low, like Sabin has, I wouldn't mind putting some MP increases every now and then from either Phantom, Fenrir, or Crusader. And of course, any HP gains always nice for Cyan, of course. So now that we covered recommended stat increases, we'll cover his in-game equipment. As I pointed out earlier, his weapon options are katanas, and his in-game are pretty much mostly heavy equipment. Unfortunately, most of the heavy equipment in the entire game outside Jinjai gear only boost his defense and nothing else. So any lightweight equipment that he gets early on is going to be definitely helpful. So in regards to World of Balance, he should always have a Twisted Headband and Power Sash equipped at all times once they become available. Those will give Cyan a decent stat boost all around for his more noble areas like Strength, Agility, and Stamina. Of course, once you get into World of Ruin, in regards to helmets, he'll definitely want the Red Cap if you want him to have more strength in general. Of course, if you want to give him a pretty decent strength boost, but give him a little bit more magic boost, Circlet is also another great option, because Circlet will give him a +4 on magic, though the strength gain is only a +2, though. Of course, if you want to dedicate one of your characters to, like a Strago or a Locke, to utilize Revenge Blast, or manipulate for better recovery with White Wind with Strago, or utilize low damage with low HP with Locke's Valiant Knife, it's probably best to give those red caps to them. But Cyan's probably one of the more better candidates for the red caps, since he gets more strength, not to mention he gets a little bit more agility in turn. Of course, if we're going into better armor options. Jinjai armor is going to probably be his best bet. Not only does this give him a +3 on magic, but he'll get a +5 on strength, which he'll definitely want. Not to mention he'll get a pretty decent boost on agility as well with 3. So giving him Circlet or Red Cap with Jinjai armor are actually probably his best options, since they'll give him some much needed stat boost, especially towards strength. Of course, if you're more concerned about piling on magic damage, Circlet can also be another good substitute, even though the strength increase is only by 2, which is 2 points shorter than what you would get with Red Cap here. But I should probably mention Circlet has better defense than Red Cap does. Luckily, there's only 2 Red Caps in the entire game you can get, basically from one in Kefka's Tower and one in Mount Sozo, which you'll get Cyan there as well. AG Shield, in my opinion, is probably the more recommended shield for him, since this will give him a pretty good boost in magic defense and magic evasion. Paladin Shield, of course, works just about on everyone that can equip it, of course. And any elemental shield can work well, and even Jinjai Shield can work just as well if you don't have enough if you want to put the AG Shield on someone else. But technically, AG Shield is probably more recommended, since he'll probably want access to better magic defense. Of course, if you want better magic defense and evasion, you should definitely have either Force Shield or and Force Armor equipped, because both of these actually give him very high magic defense and evasion, even though that does lower his options to protect himself in terms of defense a little bit lower. But technically, in my opinion, I would strongly prioritize getting the stat increases from Jinjai Armor or Red Cap instead. And AG Shield does a pretty darn decent job of giving him better magic evasion and defense. In regards to the weapons, Matsun no Komai is probably going to be the katana choice. You'll get this from Fiend, and this gives him a +20 on evasion. That also works well in Mersame as well. Once you beat Red Dragon, you'll also get access to Murakamu, which is actually a pretty decent attacking katana. It's one of the few he does get in World of Ruin. Masamune, you'll get this for free after you complete the Dreamscape side quest, though you can also rager the Murasame for this at the Dragonet Coliseum. But Murasame does give him a +10, and even though it has lower damage output, it does give him a better evasion. But the ultimate weapon he gets here in this version, it'll be best to give him that, because I'll give him 20% evasion. For relics, you should definitely prioritize physical damage, so I would strongly recommend giving him the Gygus Glove and Hero's Ring. Hero's Ring will also give him another 25% boost on magic damage, which Cyan could probably definitely use. Of course, if you don't want, and this also improves his physical damage by 25%. Of course, if you want to just give him an evasion increase relic, like Cypher Cape or Prayer Beads, that could be used instead of the Gigas Glove. As you can see here, he'll get an additional +10 on evasion and magic evasion. You can also do this with the White Cape as well. If you have Prayer Beads, those can give him, and want to prioritize mostly on his physical evasion, that can also work too. Weird, I thought I had the Prayer Beads. Unless I went past it. There's the White Cape from earlier. That also gives him a decent defense boost, by the way. And protects him against Silence and Imp as well. I guess I have the prayer beads equipped on someone else. Let me check. Yeah, I gave that to Zetzer. That actually gives you a +20 on evasion, which Cyan does have very good evasion, by the way, in general. So if you want to boost up his evasion, that could work well. Although he probably might get more benefits with White Cape and Cypher Cape instead, since both of those give him an additional 10 on magic defense. But if you want to prioritize evasion, Prayer Beads can work in addition as well. So anyway, that covers my guide for Cyan. Thank you all for coming by to watch this guide. If you do like the content that I'm putting out on both my Twitch channel and my YouTube channel. I recommend either following and sub to my channel here on Twitch, and if you would like the content that I'm putting on YouTube, please subscribe to my channel for more content. It'll help the channel grow bit by bit. We're getting close to 300 videos put on YouTube because of the highlight limit. So once this video gets highlighted and exported to YouTube, it'll be available sometime later today. And anyway, thank you all again for supporting this channel and coming by to watch it whenever possible. The next guide after Cyan is going to be Mog, our slam dancing mogul. And he'll be followed up by Strago after that. So we're getting close to some of the more notable members of the returners, and we're getting pretty darn close to being finished up with the characters with the more important skills. So anyway, I'll catch you all tomorrow for more streaming tomorrow, and because I will have a day off for the rest of the day, so I'll catch you all.